When I first started at the company, I didn't think much about how my ability to speak Arabic would play into my daily work. To me, it was simply a part of who I was, something I grew up with, a language spoken in my home, woven into my culture and identity. It never felt like a skill that needed to be highlighted or displayed. I assumed people would see my value through my performance, my dedication, and the results I brought to the team. And for a while, that seemed to be enough. But as the business grew, our client base expanded across borders. We started landing contracts with major companies in the Middle East, deals that weren't just big, they were transformative for our bottom line. These partnerships demanded a level of trust and cultural understanding that couldn't be faked. It was in these moments that my fluency, something I once viewed almost casually, became the quiet cornerstone of our success. You see, language does so much more than translate words. It translates feelings, intentions, subtle cultural nuances that a textbook or software simply can't capture. When I spoke with our clients in Arabic, they didn't just hear words they understood, they heard respect. They heard someone meeting them on their terms in their world. It instantly softened the walls of corporate formality and allowed real relationships to flourish. Decisions were made faster, misunderstandings were avoided, and loyalty was built not only to our company, but to me personally as their trusted point of contact. And yet, none of this was captured on any spreadsheet or performance metric. There wasn't a column that measured the relief on a client's face when I picked up the phone and greeted them in their mother tongue. There was no KPI that counted the number of cultural faux pas I helped the company avoid because I understood the deeper context of a client's hesitation. My skill, so pivotal to our operations, remained largely invisible to the executives upstairs, who never sat in those delicate meetings or heard the laughter shared in Arabic over small jokes that eased tense negotiations. This is something I think so many companies get wrong. They look for the loudest signals, the flashiest marketing campaigns, the biggest deals closed, but overlook the quiet mechanisms that make those successes possible. They tally up sales numbers without realizing that the reason a client even took the meeting was because they felt respected and understood in their own language. They reduce people to roles and salaries, forgetting that behind every title is a unique set of experiences, backgrounds, and yes, sometimes hidden talents that can't be replicated by the next person in line. In my case, this blind spot proved costly. The CEO didn't see a linguist, a bridge builder, a trusted advisor to our most important clients. He saw a mid-level employee with a salary that could be trimmed in pursuit of a leaner budget. He fired me without so much as a second thought, entirely unaware that in doing so he was severing the very connection that held our largest accounts together. So when people ask me what went wrong, I say this: it wasn't just about one bad decision, it was about a culture that failed to look beyond the obvious, a company that didn't take the time to truly understand the richness of its people and the real reasons behind its success. And in the end, that short-sightedness cost them far more than my paycheck ever would have. Because sometimes the most valuable asset in a company isn't listed on any balance sheet. It's quietly sitting in the next office over, speaking a language you don't even realize you need. Looking back on it now, I realize that what happened to me was never just a simple matter of being let go. It was a glaring example of mismanagement, of leadership that prided itself on bold moves and efficiency without truly pausing to understand what, or more importantly who, was driving their success. The decision to fire me was made quickly, probably in one of those closed-door meetings where executives stand around a polished table, flipping through spreadsheets and nodding over neat bar charts. They likely congratulated themselves afterward, thinking they had streamlined operations and shaved off what they believed was unnecessary cost. In their eyes, they were steering the company toward leaner, more agile days. But that's where short-sighted decisions reveal their true danger. On paper, I was simply a salary figure, a line item in an HR report. They saw me as replaceable because they had never bothered to understand what I actually did on a daily basis, or why my relationships with our clients couldn't just be handed off to the next person. In line, they operated under the assumption that skills are universal, that all employees are interchangeable parts in a well-oiled machine. That belief is not only flawed, it's risky, because people aren't identical cogs. They carry with them knowledge, trust, intuition, and history that can't be replicated by hiring someone else with a similar title. When the CEO signed off on letting me go, he failed to consider what that meant beyond a temporary bump to the profit margin. He didn't see the hours I had spent on midnight calls easing the worries of a client halfway across the world, or the countless times I adjusted presentations to be culturally sensitive so we didn't embarrass ourselves in negotiations. He didn't know about the quick texts in Arabic I sent to clarify last-minute contract points, saving deals that could have slipped away due to simple misunderstandings. It's one thing to cut costs by eliminating duplicate roles or streamlining redundant processes. Most businesses have to make those tough calls from time to time. But it's something else entirely to make sweeping decisions without first learning the actual impact of the people you're removing. A good leader takes the time to understand the unique contributions of each team member, even the quiet ones who don't spend their days broadcasting their wins. The best leaders are curious, asking questions and digging deeper before deciding whose desk needs to be cleared. What happened in our company was the opposite. There was a rush to impress the board to show fast results in the next quarterly report. In chasing that quick win, the CEO overlooked the slow, steady work that had built the relationships paying our bills. He underestimated how delicate trust is with international clients, trust that took years to establish and could be lost in a single careless moment. When he signed off on firing me, he didn't just cross out an employee ID number. He fractured connections that were holding our largest accounts together. By the time they realized the mistake, it was too late. The damage had been done, and patching it up wasn't as simple as forwarding emails or handing over a new business card. Our clients felt betrayed, confused about why the person who had always spoken their language and understood their needs had vanished overnight. In a matter of weeks, some of them began quietly looking elsewhere, taking with them revenue streams that were far more costly than any salary line they thought they were saving. All of this could have been avoided with a bit more humility, a willingness to slow down and see beyond the immediate numbers. But in their haste, they chose the appearance of efficiency over genuine stability, and in the end, that kind of leadership doesn't save companies, it unravels them. If there's one thing my experience taught me, it's that business isn't just about contracts and figures. It's about people. It's about trust, especially when you're dealing across borders with clients whose language, customs, and expectations differ from your own. Trust becomes the invisible thread that holds everything together. And trust is fragile. It's earned over countless small moments, through gestures that show respect, through conversations that don't just skim the surface, but dig into shared understanding. When I first started handling our Middle Eastern accounts, I quickly realized how much deeper this went than just running meetings through an interpreter or sending neatly translated documents. Our clients weren't looking for someone who could simply get the grammar right. They wanted to feel genuinely understood. They wanted to do business with someone who grasped the subtle undercurrents of their culture, someone who knew when a direct approach would be welcomed and when it might be seen as pushy or even offensive. Speaking Arabic wasn't just about vocabulary or pronunciation. It was about the way I could slip in an Arabic proverb during a tense negotiation to lighten the mood, or the way I could adjust my tone to match the more formal etiquette expected in certain discussions. It was about knowing that a brief conversation about family or local traditions before jumping into numbers wasn't wasted time. It was essential groundwork. Those moments weren't fluff. They were where the real deal started. I remember one particular instance that always sticks with me. We were finalizing a substantial contract with one of our largest clients in Riyadh. It had taken months of careful conversations to get to that point. On the morning of the signing, one of the executives looked slightly uneasy. Rather than pushing straight into paperwork, I took a few minutes to chat with him in Arabic about a recent holiday his family had celebrated. His entire demeanor shifted. He relaxed, smiled, and by the time we moved to the agreement, that hesitation was gone. Later, he confided that it meant a lot to him to speak in his own language about things that mattered personally before talking business. That simple human connection sealed a deal worth millions, and it happened not because we had the best price on paper, but because we built trust in a way that felt personal and real. These are the kinds of moments that can't be engineered by clever marketing or slick presentations. They rely on authentic relationships, and language is often the key that unlocks that door. Being able to speak directly to someone in their native tongue tears down barriers immediately. It shows you've invested enough to meet them where they are. It tells them that you respect not just their money, but their identity. That kind of respect is rare, and it sticks with people long after the contracts are signed. Sadly, my company never fully grasped this. They saw the revenue, but didn't understand why it kept coming. They underestimated how much of it was tied to trust I'd built through countless conversations that had nothing to do with contracts and everything to do with connection. So when they cut me loose, they thought they were trimming overhead. What they really did was pull out the very roots holding some of our most important partnerships together. Because in international business, you can't just buy loyalty or manufacture trust overnight. You build it word by word, gesture by gesture, until it becomes a quiet force working for you behind the scenes. Lose that, and you lose far more than any single deal. You lose the very foundation that future deals would stand on. Throughout all those years I gave to the company, loyalty was never something I questioned. It felt almost automatic. If there was a late night call with a client across the globe, I'd take it without complaint. If a proposal needed to be rewritten over a weekend to align better with local customs, I was there, typing away at my kitchen table. When last-minute travel was required to smooth over a misunderstanding, I'd pack my bag without hesitation, missing birthdays and family gatherings because I believed in what we were building. For me, loyalty wasn't some abstract idea. It was woven into every small decision I made. I genuinely wanted the company to succeed, and I took personal pride in every contract signed, every partnership secured. Even when things became stressful, when deadlines were impossible, and expectations seemed unfair, I reminded myself that this was part of the trust we all placed in one another. They relied on me to handle our clients with care and cultural sensitivity, and in return, I believed they valued me beyond just the figures on my paycheck. But loyalty, I've learned, is a two-way street. It can't just flow from the bottom up. It has to be met with appreciation and respect from the top down. Otherwise, it starts to feel less like loyalty and more like quiet exploitation. And that's exactly where things began to unravel for me. You see, for all the hours I put in, for all the times I stepped up to protect delicate client relationships, there was very little acknowledgement. No genuine efforts to understand the personal sacrifices involved. No conversations about how to support my workload or ensure I didn't burn out under the constant pressure of maintaining these high-stakes partnerships. The assumption seemed to be that I would simply keep delivering, no matter what, because that's what I'd always done. And in a way, they weren't wrong. I did keep delivering right up until the day they decided my role was expendable. The loyalty I had shown them for years wasn't even part of the calculation. There was no discussion about how my relationships might be different, or why clients trusted me in ways they might not trust someone new. Just a curt meeting where they let me go as if I were an easily replaceable piece in their grand puzzle. I won't pretend it didn't sting. In that moment, all those late nights and missed family moments played back in my mind. All the ways I'd bent over backward to ensure the company never stumbled in our international dealings suddenly felt like a kind of private joke. One I hadn't realized I was the punchline to. Because when push came to shove, none of it mattered. The loyalty I had so freely given was met not with gratitude or even basic understanding, but with cold indifference. What strikes me most now is how preventable all of this was. If they had valued people the way they claimed to, if they had looked beyond immediate costs and truly grasped the relationships underpinning their success, they would have seen that loyalty is an asset that can't be bought outright. It's nurtured over time, protected through mutual respect and recognition. Lose that, and you lose something far more vital than a single employee. Because once trust breaks, internally or with client, it rarely comes back in full force. And no amount of the fact scrambling or belated appreciation can ever patch it completely. When the CEO made the decision to fire me, he probably felt a sense of quick triumph. Maybe he thought he'd found a clever way to tighten the budget or impress the board with decisive action. What he didn't grasp, what he couldn't have because he never took the time to look closely, was just how fragile the web of relationships holding our biggest accounts together truly was. To him, it must have seemed like a simple subtraction. Remove one salary, save X amount each year. But to the clients I had spent years nurturing, it felt like a betrayal. It wasn't just a change in staff. It was a crack in the very trust we had so painstakingly built. In the days and weeks that followed, I heard through quiet channels how awkward things had become. Clients who once called me directly to discuss sensitive issues now found themselves routed to someone new, someone who didn't speak their language, who didn't understand the small cultural nuances that mattered so deeply. Where conversations had once flowed easily in Arabic, allowing clients to voice concerns they might not have been comfortable saying in English, there was now stiff formality, strained pauses, uncomfortable clarifications through interpreters. Some of these clients tried to be patient at first. They hoped that the company would quickly find its footing again. But soon small misunderstandings started piling up, tiny translation errors that slightly changed the meaning of a promise or deadline, missed opportunities to read between the lines when a client hesitated. The personal warmth was gone. Deals that might have once moved ahead with a simple phone call now stalled for weeks, bogged down in clarifications and follow-ups that never used to be necessary. And of course, it wasn't long before our competitors took notice. They swooped in, eager to demonstrate not just better pricing or fancier presentations, but genuine cultural understanding. They sent representatives who spoke Arabic fluently, who knew the etiquette of a handshake, the right greetings for different times of year, the subtle honor given to a well-placed proverb. Little by little, the clients who had once been ours exclusively began taking calls from others. They were polite about it. These were long-standing relationships, after all. But behind closed doors, they were weighing their options. What had once been stable and secure revenue streams began to look shaky. Projects were delayed. Renewals that should have been automatic required tense negotiations. In some cases, contracts were quietly allowed to lapse, slipping away without the company even realizing exactly when or how it happened. The leadership team scrambled, no doubt, trying to figure out where things were going wrong. They probably ran reports and held urgent meetings to discuss strategy, but numbers on a spreadsheet can't tell you that a client's trust was eroded the moment they realized the person who spoke to them in their own language was abruptly cut loose without explanation. By then, of course, the damage was done. Relationships that take years to cultivate can unravel in mere weeks when mishandled. And once a client feels undervalued or misunderstood, winning them back becomes a far steeper climb. The fallout from my firing wasn't immediate bankruptcy or scandal. It was something quieter, more insidious. A slow bleed of confidence and connection that left the company far weaker than before, though they might not fully grasp why. It's ironic, really. In their rush to save a bit of money, they ended up losing far more. Not just in missed contracts or lost revenue, but in reputation. The sort of reputation that tells clients, you can trust us to understand you, to honor your needs, to treat your business with respect. Once that's gone, there's no spreadsheet in the world that can calculate how costly it truly is. If there's any silver lining to all of this, it's that I walked away with lessons I'll carry for the rest of my life, lessons that I think every leader and every employee needs to understand, no matter what industry they're in. Because while it's easy to chalk my story up to one CEO poor decision, the truth is these kinds of missteps happen everywhere, every day. They happen in organizations that grow too fast to see what's really sustaining them, or in leadership teams that get so focused on profit and metrics that they lose sight of the human fabric tying it all together. For leaders, the takeaway is painfully simple: know your people. Not just their titles, not just what shows up in quarterly reports, but who they are, what they bring, and how they contribute in ways that may not always be obvious. It's not enough to walk the floor once a month and shake a few hands or glance over performance summaries. You have to dig deeper, ask questions that go beyond how are you progressing on that project. Try instead, what do you think our clients value most in how we serve them? Or is there something you're doing that you think goes unnoticed? You'd be surprised how much quiet value is sitting right there in your organization value that isn't captured by your dashboards, but is absolutely critical to your survival. And while it's easy to view this solely as a cautionary tale for management, there's a powerful message here for employees too. It's about understanding your own worth beyond the line items of a job description. I spent years quietly adding value in ways my company never fully appreciated. I didn't document it, I didn't advocate for it. I just assumed that my dedication and the results would speak for themselves. But unfortunately, results don't always tell the full story, at least not to people who aren't paying close attention. So keep track of the intangibles. Make note of the trust you've built, the relationships you've nurtured, the cultural or technical nuances you manage that no one else does. Not to be boastful, but to protect yourself. Because if leadership ever changes, or if priorities suddenly shift, you want to be ready to clearly articulate why your contributions matter. Your unique value isn't something to hide out of modesty. It's your insurance, your evidence, and sometimes your best defense. This experience also taught me that loyalty should never be blind. Give your best. Absolutely pour yourself into your work if you care about it. But do it with your eyes open. understand the dynamics of your company, know whether they truly value what you bring, or if you're simply an overlooked pillar they won't realize they're leaning on until it's gone. Because there's a difference between dedication and quiet self-sacrifice. One can drive your career forward, the other can leave you abruptly standing outside the doors you once helped keep open. At the end of it all, what I hope people take from my story is that businesses aren't built by spreadsheets or strategies alone. They're built by people with all their hidden talents, relationships, and unspoken efforts. Lose sight of that, and you risk losing everything that truly holds your company together.